Good morning.
Good morning. You made it up.
Early morning. You made it up.
I was going to give you a 6 o'clock wake-up call.
I'm used to it. My kids already do it at 5 a.m., my toddler. But you were out at the suites, meeting with some students, I understand. So how was it last night?
We had a great time. Do you know what I love, Anthony, is seeing the young students get involved. It's absolutely incredible. We have to get engaged with the kids in college and university and make sure they get engaged in the future of our province and our country. That's really encouraging. I have 4 girls and right around their age, and I always tell them, get engaged.
Before we talk about getting new people engaged, let's go back a bit and talk about you getting involved.
Yeah.
Because a few months ago, Doug Ford, what was he doing? He was running for mayor of Toronto, doing a repeat of that battle royale with John Tory in 2014, and then a whole bunch of stuff happens. Here we are now. What brought us here? Why are you running?
Yeah, none of us expected for any of us to be here, any of the people running, and when something like that happens, you have to step up to the plate and make sure that we make sure our party goes in the right direction. And our party needs a principled leader, a leader that is willing to get up there and be decisive and unite the party and move forward and defeat Kathleen Wynne and the Liberals.
But why the quick switch? Because you know what they're already saying. They're going, is Doug just being an opportunist here? Because he had his heart set on mayor, and then suddenly this opportunity arises. Yeah. So how did this switcheroo happen?
Well, on the Toronto, there's no doubt I have a passion for Toronto and the rest of Ontario. But we're a creature of the province. Every municipality is a creature of the province. The province controls the purse strings. So we can build proper transit sitting in the premier seat a lot better than I could in the mayor's seat. And we can build affordable housing through the funding of the province. We can do a lot more with the province than you can being mayor of the city. And I can serve all the people of Ontario opposed to just the people of Toronto.
So you want to take what you and Rob did at the local level and just inflate it, both for all of Toronto, and then what about the other cities as well?
Well, they're a priority. I don't just focus on Toronto, focus on all of Ontario. I think all of Ontario is in real trouble right now under the Liberal regime, as I call them. Over 15 years of the McGuinty-Wynne Liberals, they've destroyed this province. And you've heard this over and over again, friends, but we're paying almost $12 billion in servicing our debt. As I've said over and over again when I speak, that's $12 billion that could go to families with children with autism. $12 billion that we could build affordable housing. $12 billion we could build infrastructure that you don't have to sit in traffic for hours trying to get from point A to point B, as we had a discussion before we came out here. I was telling Anthony that we have a facility in Chicago, and I can get from Chicago to Toronto in 57 minutes, and I can't get from Etobicoke downtown in less than an hour. We have to start focusing on infrastructure, not just in Toronto, right across the province.
Okay, before we get more into the weeds about public policy, I want to talk about the Ford family. Yes. I want to talk about Ford Nation. We're coming up for the 2-year anniversary of your brother Rob's death. And that was such a moment in municipal politics and at certain times for the world, for the English-speaking world. What is it like? Rob gone for 2 years. There must be such a giant hole there in the family.
It is. It's a huge hole. My heart breaks for his kids. They're 12 years old and 9, and he was a champion. Sure, he had a few bumps in the road, but he was the ultimate civil servant. I'll tell you a story. When Rob had a couple weeks left and he was in the hospital, and he knew he only had a couple weeks left, and I walked into the hospital room and he had his call sheet returning calls. And I said, Rob, what are you doing? He says, well, they're expecting me to call back. That was his mentality. Who does that when you know you have 2 weeks left to live and you're returning constituents' calls? Who does it? He was the ultimate public servant.
If Rob was around today and you said, I'm going to run for Premier of Ontario, what would he say?
he'd say, go get him. He was encouraging me last time. But the weight of the world is on your shoulders. When you had to make sure his family was okay, you had to make sure that you took care of Rob. We were in the hospital, you know, day in and day out. And I don't think there's a person in this room that hasn't had a family member or friend that has been stricken by cancer. It's the worst, one of the worst diseases going. And it didn't, with Rob, it didn't just happen in a few weeks. It happened over months. And you had to be beside him. You had to make sure he was taken care of. And that's why I got such a soft spot for our nurses and our doctors. Until you're actually in the hospital day in and day out and day in and day out, and you see the stress they're under, and then you see the Liberal government just attack our doctors, the greatest doctors in the world. Rob had the greatest doctors in the world at Mount Sinai, and the greatest nurses. But at nighttime, because I'd sleep there, and you'd have 2 nurses taking care of the whole floor. Wow. You know, they're under major pressure, and they can't keep up with the capacity that's coming in. Even as I mentioned at our rally the other day about Humber River Hospital, the first digital hospital in North America. You know, they were lined up, the stretchers were lined up in the hallway, like the cars on the 401. And the Liberal government has delivered hallway health care. And again, it's not the doctor's fault, not EMS, it's not the nurses. Number one, the biggest frustration is they aren't being listened to. I've talked to numerous doctors, and they just aren't being listened to. And Dr. Ruben Devlin, he was part of the PC party. He's on our team. He's kind of our healthcare expert, and he shares the same view, that just listen to him. Let the experts. You know what I can't stand, folks, is when politicians think they're the experts. They think they can go in there and, you know, tell the doctors how to run a healthcare system, and they've never been in the healthcare system. I take a different approach in our business and politics. I always surround myself with smarter people than myself in their area of expertise. And that's what we need to build a strong team.
So I'm talking about you and Rob as if you're municipal political animals. Mm-hmm. But there's your father, Doug Sr., who served with Mike Harris from 95 to 99. I remember in 2010, the day Rob won the election, he looked up and he said, "This is for you, Dad." Mm-hmm. Is this right now what you're doing for your dad?
It's for my dad and Rob and the people of Ontario. You know, we have a vision. And we have a vision that we're going to turn this province around. We're going to blaze a new trail to make this province the most prosperous province, not just in Canada, in all of North America. We have a guy south of the border that just lowered the corporate tax down to 21%. He's making incentives for companies to come up to Ontario, and Kathleen Wynne Liberals are taxing the death out of companies. Campbell Soup down the street in Etobicoke, a 100-year company, they're closing their doors. The hydro rates are the highest in North America, water rates, property taxes. We have to give companies incentives. I get letters every single week from chambers of commerce all over the U.S. We have our facility in Chicago, but I get them from Texas, from Alabama, everywhere, encouraging us, come down to our state. We'll give you a tax-free zone for 10 years. We'll help you with the building as long as you employ people. We're going to take that mentality up in Ontario.
So what specific incentives are you going to do? I mean, Kathleen Wynne, she's meeting with a lot of companies. She makes them promises. She gives them money. She gives them special breaks. Says they'll give Cisco Canada, I think, like $200 million or something like that. Are you talking things like that?
No, I'm not into this corporate welfare. I'll tell you that. I'm dead against corporate welfare. There's a difference between giving them incentives on tax breaks and writing a check of the taxpayers' money. You know, for example, Bombardier. We've been bailing them out for years and years and years. Where's the end here? Either be competitive or not. But let's give them incentives just on tax breaks.
So going back, we talk about you and Rob in the media somewhat interchangeably for, you know, whether that's fair or not. We also talk about sometimes when we sub in the word Ford Nation when we're talking about you and what you're doing. What does that mean? What's Ford Nation?
You know, it's funny. People ask me that, and there's no card-carrying, member that says Ford Nation here. I'm Ford Nation.
What's the secret
It's
handshake?
people, yeah, exactly. I'd like to study that one day because it's the most interesting group, most diverse group in any political arena I've ever seen. It's a true snapshot of Ontario. You have every, race, color, creed, every political stripe. And if we need to win this province, we're going to do it, not per se Ford Nation, but we need to attract NDP and Liberal voters. Do you know who did that? The Liberals did that in the last federal election. They took the NDP vote, and that's how we ended up with a mess in Ottawa right now, because he siphoned the NDP vote. We need to convert people. I have had so many people tell me, I can't believe, Doug, I'm a PC member. Our voter base is 40%, and poll after poll after poll sees us. NDPs know it. Liberals know it. 40% of our traditional base are NDP union members. 49% are traditional Liberal voters. And then we have our fiscal conservative base. But don't count out hardworking union people from being fiscally conservative. A lot of these hard-working union people, I'll go down the street in Toronto, and the construction workers, they go wild. These guys are working their back off in freezing cold weather. They're getting paid very well. Some of them are making $80,000, $100,000 a year. Nothing ticks them off more than opening the paper and seeing billions of dollars waste. They go home, they open their hydro bill. They're furious. They are fiscally conservative.
Well, hold on. Let's time out. I want to go back to that again. You're saying Doug Ford, right here on stage, saying that 50% of your base are left-wingers, and you're not going to win by getting disaffected right-wingers necessarily, or by focusing on the center, but you're even bringing over people from the left.
Well, our province needs to make sure we attract everyone from all parties. A perfect example, friends, are in the municipal election when I had 4.5 weeks, to get a team together and move forward. Out of 44 wards, I won 20 of them in 4 weeks. That equals 10 seats in Toronto. We need seats in Toronto. We need seats in the 905. And our message resonates even better in the rural areas than it does in the 416. So in the last election, I ended up with 350% more votes than all the PC candidates combined in the city of Toronto. And, we need those seats. Wow. We're going to win Toronto. We're going to win 905, 519, 613. We're going to sweep this province. We will sweep this province, and we'll unite the team, and we're going to make this the greatest province anywhere, ever in the history of Canada. We're going to make this province boom. We're going to blaze a new trail of prosperity like this province has never seen before, ever.
You talked about Rob there in the hospital, working the phone sheets, calling people back. He said, here's my cell phone number to the world. People called him. He talked to them. I remember pictures of you when you were a councillor going to people's homes and personally fixing their appliances, or they maybe had a problem with the water main and the city wasn't getting to it. So you went there. You personally did that. Ford Nation has a lot of retail politics to it.
It does.
Ontario is 14 million people.
Understood.
There's trade deals. We're talking, you mentioned the healthcare system, 40% of the budget, very labyrinthine. How does that translate, your previous approach?
I understand that you can't do that with 14 million people, but you sure can instill that into your team. You can make sure that your team returns calls. And I don't know if any of you ever tried to call the government before, and you get the runaround, you go around and around and around, and by the time they send you to 14 different lines, you can't get the answer. We'll instill customer service excellence at all levels, because the taxpayer is the one that is the most important, and that's how we were raised. We were raised, make sure the customer is number one, and the taxpayers are number one. And a lot of politicians and all parties, they get up, they get elected, and they totally forget their base. And that's one thing I learned off Rob. I learned off my dad, and learned off being down there myself. Don't forget your base. There's people from all over the world that come to Ontario and across Canada from all sorts of different backgrounds and countries, and they'd come to Ontario or Toronto specifically, and they'd have a card, and all of a sudden they felt, they called the mayor, they had a voice. They had a voice. They didn't have to make a $1,000 donation to have a voice. And that's why our base is, blue-collar, hard-working people.
Public policy-wise, you say customer service has to be up front, customer service excellence. But throughout the Liberal tenure, we have seen the creation of some new positions, and we've got commissioners, integrity commissioner, privacy commissioner, outpatient ombudsperson, the former one, Christine, of course, running for this position. Service Ontario has been revamped. In what way is customer service failing right now, and in what way would you do it better?
Well, first of all, there's no accountability. There's no accountability at a hierarchy. They aren't, the premier's not holding the people underneath her accountable. There hasn't been any transparency whatsoever at the province. There's zero integrity right now. Kathleen Wynne does not care about the average taxpayers of this province. He just doesn't.
So, again, when we're talking about, Ford Nation going broader, I was just at breakfast with two ladies who'd been long-standing party activists, knocking on the doors for 20 years. And I said, I'm going to go talk to Doug now. What's the one thing you would most like to know? And they said, can he unite the party? Because you're seen, accurately or not, as a polarizing figure. Although you were just talking about bringing the left on board. Can you unite the Ontario PC party at this point?
Well, not only am I going to unite it, and I'll tell each and every one of you, I've had an opportunity to talk to every MPP. A lot of them aren't supporting me. But every single one of them, everyone has told me the same thing. Doug, if you win, we're 100% behind you. 100% behind you. And I wouldn't be able to have a successful business if I didn't unite people. But it's not just about uniting the party, because that's my #1 priority. It's about uniting the province. Nothing is better than listening to a traditional NDP voter or traditional Liberal voter carrying a PC card now. That's how governments shift back and forth. Sometimes people vote for Liberal or NDP, then they vote PC. This time they're voting PC. And we're attracting more members than ever before, we've had a few problems at the party on getting memberships. I called the party the other day, and I'm not going to get anyone in trouble by the party, but I said, we're having a real problem. People are calling up constantly, and they can't sign up. And he said, well, jokingly, he said, Doug, that's your fault. And I said, why? He said, because you guys crashed the system twice. 11,000 people signed up after you had a rally. Those are staggering numbers, all within hours. So I said, make sure we put in the budget to have a better server and get ready, because that's just the beginning. Yeah.
Well, but on that note, Vic Fideli, he said, we got to root out the rot. He says there's problems in the party. So respectfully, maybe the system crashed because there's also other problems with this system as well. And they said, we got a problem with the funds, this membership list is bogus, and so forth. Yeah. Uniting the party, I think, also involves rehabilitating the party.
Yes.
How will you do that?
Well, first of all, again, I keep using this word, it's accountability. Making sure we have a principled leader that doesn't waver, that doesn't make a decision, last week, and then looks at the polls and all of a sudden flip-flops this week and changes their mind. You have to be a principled leader, believe in what you believe in, and do what you said you were going to do. There's very few politicians that actually do what they say they're going to do. Top of my head, Mike Harris was one, Rob Ford was another. And we're going to do what we say we're going to do. We are going to make sure that we clean out the party. And, everyone, not our party per se, but in politics, everyone wants to feather their buddies' nests and the backroom deals. No one can influence me. No one can buy me. They just can't do it.
Now, you said you spoke to all the MPPs, and
Yes.
some are supporting, some aren't, but they all made it clear they'd be 100% behind you if you
100%.
win. Will you be 100% behind Christine Elliott or Carolyn Mulroney?
First of all, I love Christine and her family. Loved Jim, best finance minister ever. He was incredible. Yeah. And Carolyn, I think she's a wonderful person. I haven't had an opportunity to sit down and talk with Caroline, but I think she has a very bright future in our party.
So you're currently declared to run as the MPP or to get the nomination
Yes.
in Etobicoke North.
Yes.
If you don't win the leadership this time around, will you still run in the June election as an MPP in Etobicoke North?
Yeah, absolutely. I have an obligation to the party once I commit something to contribute back to the party. But even more importantly, the people of Etobicoke North, or all of Etobicoke, have been, we're so grateful for their support through good times, through bad times. They've stuck beside us. My dad served under the Mike Harris government in Etobicoke. My brother did. I did. My nephew serving him now. And when someone calls up, sometimes they don't even call. They just show up to your door. Well, they're welcome. And they have an issue. And you literally know the whole community by name. It's a very, very close-knit community in Etobicoke. Somehow, everyone knows everyone. And they know when they need help. You know, will come to us and we'll help them on. Even when I wasn't elected the last 3 or 4 years, as my assistant said, we had 15 calls a day coming in from every single issue, from immigration issues to potholes to you name it, anything. Some guy called me up, his water main burst, and he couldn't get the water department over there. Within 15 minutes, I hopped in my car, I went up to Keelan 401 and called the city and said, get up there. And sure enough, I got up there and the water guys were there. Little things like that.
So speaking of showing up at your door,
Yes.
you announced your campaign at your mom's house, in her basement. It wasn't a low-ceiling basement. It's a pretty nice basement. And, for a lot of people out there, perhaps in the media, some people chuckled at this. I think someone teased you about it, maybe Kathleen Wynne. So other people laughed at you for it. But then for others, it's stuff like that that's particularly why they find you endearing. Why did you announce from your mom's basement?
Well, that was done on purpose. That was a conservative hub for years, and the person that took shots at me, Mayor Tory, I found it ironic because when he ran for leader and he was kind of going downhill on his education plan, we stood behind him and had 500 people. I'm sure people in this room were at that event when we stood up to the plate and said, we're going to stand behind our leader, even though we didn't agree with what he was doing at the time, and there was 500 people at the barbecue. There's no residents in all of Canada that has had more political parties, more political leaders, from prime ministers to mayors to premiers to every minister federally and provincially in a backyard, and we've supported the party. We have never wavered from supporting our party federally or provincially.
You spoke about that John Tory 2007 election with the religious school thing that became the referendum issue. Right now, it looks like carbon tax is gearing up to be a referendum issue. Not here, because all three of you agree, but perhaps in the general election. And in Saskatchewan, maybe it's going to be a national referendum soon in the way the public conversation is having. Do you feel confident going out with that as a signature issue, carbon tax? You were the first out of the gate opposing it.
I think not only the carbon tax, it's finances. Carbon tax is a terrible, terrible tax. I don't even know why they put the word carbon in front of it. I don't. It's just a tax. A tax is a tax. That's what it is. And I'm excited about my friend Jason Kenney to get elected. At least he'll be on side with us. And then we have Saskatchewan, and Ontario. We'll be a force to be reckoned with the Prime Minister. We have 2 or 3 pretty powerful provinces. So maybe he should revisit it.
So I think you, Jason Kenney, Scott Moe, new Premier of Saskatchewan, he was here speaking the other night. You guys are going to get together, get a posse going, maybe go knock on the Supreme Court door or something like that and really challenge this issue?
If we have to do it, we have to do it.
All right.
We'll do whatever it takes to make sure our businesses are competitive. You know, it'd be an unfair playing field, and the Prime Minister's hurting businesses in this country by giving them an unnecessary tax. No, let's give it an example. The farmers down in Leamington, everyone's gone down in Leamington and they've seen miles of these greenhouses. Carbon tax is going to kill these people. It's a bad tax. And he uses carbon just for the sake of carbon. It's not going in the general coffers.
Right. On other issues, public policy issues, you got the People's Guarantee document. You've previously said you're going to keep about 90% of that, so you're sticking to it a great deal. What elements of it are you confident that you can go to the people of Ontario with and really push on those issues, the key sort of passion points there?
Well, I respect our party. I respect our members. They voted on it. But I don't know how that carbon tax snuck in there somehow, because 90% of us don't agree with it. So somehow it got in there. And I'm going to go with it. I personally, I like 5 points instead of the People's Magazine version, 80 pages. It's just, boom, 5 simple points. Let's move forward. But I'm going to respect the decision of the members. I always will. I will always let the people of this party run the party. Always. We're going to have free votes when they're MPPs and open votes, except one thing is the budget. We have to work together and we have to vote together on the budget. But outside of that, they can vote the way they want.
All right, election coming up. Kathleen Wynne, I saw a little video clip taken by a Liberal insider at their internal Christmas party, and she started telling a story saying, I'm a marathon runner. I know how to run marathons. This is a marathon. Most people would see the 11% approval rating that she got and run for the door. Kathleen Wynne's a fighter. That 2007 election, she wasn't supposed to be an MPP. She beat John Tory. She wasn't supposed to be leader. She beat Pupatello. Right. She wasn't supposed to win in 2014. She's a fighter, and I think she would really like to do a fight with you. Are you ready for that?
Absolutely. I can't wait. Absolutely. Yeah. I never ever underestimate our opponents. But she'll be in a fight of her life, and I'm the only person that's going to give her a fight of her life. Politics is a small world. I have Liberal friends, part of the Liberal Party and part of the NDP party. A couple of my good Liberal friends that are really deep inside, I won't say the exact words, but they said they're terrified of you, Doug. They're terrified that they're going to go up against you. I'm going to call them out for all the scandals and everything that have destroyed this province. But
Tim Hudak called them out for the scandals too, and they got back in. Mm-hmm. How will you do it differently?
Don't worry. We're fighters. We're absolutely fighters, and we're going to fight for the people of Ontario. She has no idea. She's been in the ring with the others. She's never been in the ring with me. Ever.
Although you've been in the ring with John Tory, who I would respectfully say is maybe a bit of a puppy dog, and Kathleen Wynne's a bit of a pit bull, and you don't underestimate the Big Red Machine.
Never.
You don't underestimate their opposition research.
No.
You talked about before with Rob and you guys, there's maybe been a couple bumps in the road over the years. Mm-hmm. They're going to throw it all at you. They're going to throw the kitchen sink at you. Can you take it?
There's no better training ground. No better training ground anywhere in the country than the city of Toronto. You sit there and you debate. It's 4 years of hardcore training. You don't debate in the province and the feds like you do in the city. It's full-on attack. You wake up in the morning and it's debate, all throughout the hallways and the committees. And I'll tell you, it was the best training ground ever. And don't underestimate any councillor. As we've always said, every councillor can get up and, as we say, scrap it out. Some might be quieter, but when they drop the gloves, every one of them are capable of debating very well.
We've just got 1 minute left. What do you want to say to the people of Ontario?
My friends, again, we're going to blaze a new trail in Ontario. We'll make this the most prosperous province in the entire country. Matter of fact, in all of North America. We're going to have a big sign at the border, a neon sign. Ontario is open for business. And we're going to attract businesses. I'm the only candidate that's going to save you money. It's going to reduce taxes, put money back in your pocket, and again, we'll always respect the taxpayers, always.
Doug Ford, thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.